From the kitchen of the cabin and around the world, this is Voices from Solitude, a podcast about the coronavirus and gaming. Today I'm talking to Dr. Lucy Hughes. We talk about anxiety and what we can do to alleviate it. So, I have the honour today to be joined by a clinical psychologist, someone who actually knows something about this situation rather than just the speculation that we see on social media. And she also has the dubious honour of being internet titan Dan Hughes' sister-in-law. I'm joined today by Dr. Lucy Hughes. Welcome. Thank you for giving your time over.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, you're a clinical psychologist, and I'm going to ask you a question you must be asked 100 times, so please indulge me. But firstly, what do you do, and what is the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist?
Well, that I do get asked that a lot. So a sort of simple explanation is a psychiatrist works with sort of more the medication side of things. So treating mental health with medication, and then a psychologist, we look to kind of understand a little bit about why mental health is occurring, and then do a lot of sort of talking therapy.
And so you work with Dan, and Dan's a psychiatric nurse. How do your two jobs kind of bounce off each other? What's the relationship you have within the workplace?
Well, he's, as you said, he's a nurse. And so we work in a crisis team. So when someone is in a mental health crisis, maybe thinking kind of suicidal thoughts, then I would be trying to unpick a little bit of an understanding about why that's happened, a bit of a kind of a story, and thinking about whether therapy might be useful, or at least trying to kind of help the team to understand how they've got to that point. And then Dan, the psychiatrist, and the nurses kind of think about more medication to kind of relieve those symptoms. But they also kind of go in, or we all kind of go in to build that relationship with clients as well. That's really important, the therapeutic relationship, and sort of offering support in that time of need. So we kind of work very collaboratively together as a whole team, really.
And so obviously, the situation, so your job requires sitting in rooms, talking to people. How has your workday changed since this COVID thing became an issue?
Well, we're the only service that is still required to kind of keep going through this crisis, because obviously we sort of gatekeep about whether people go into a psychiatric ward or not. What we're actually seeing at the moment is caseloads actually reduced quite a lot, and there might be kind of a couple of reasons for that. Partly maybe because people might be getting a lot more support from their family and the community, so maybe people aren't actually experiencing that kind of level of crisis that they were before. Obviously, it's all a very new situation, so I think people are still sort of adjusting to things. And I mean, basically, services are sort of requiring to not go out and see clients. We're doing a lot more telephone-based work now. We do still see clients, but we do also have to kind of check on their symptoms and wear protective gear if needed. So it is still quite frontline work, really.
And I guess that you deal with a lot of sort of depression and anxiety, that sort of thing. Have you seen, clients that you've worked with, are they disproportionately focused on the current situation or not?
Surprisingly, actually not so much. What I've seen actually is that people that are quite anxious have actually been less anxious about the coronavirus, perhaps because they're kind of feeling like everyone's in it together. And it's maybe something a little bit, I don't know. I think it's quite a hard thing to get your head around, isn't it? Really, I'm struggling myself. I can't quite believe what's going on. So I don't think people are as affected just yet, but I suspect, and perhaps I'll be wrong, I don't know, but I suspect that mental health problems will start to kind of manifest over time with social isolation, and things like that. So I suspect it feels a little quiet at the moment, but I think that we will have problems further along the line.
Well, going on to that, the reason I got in contact, besides I'd love if you dished some dirt on Dan in public, but the reason I got in contact was Dan posted a video up, and you talked about sort of anxiety and how to deal with it. And I was struck by one thing you said that I found super interesting. Is you were talking about how thoughts can manifest themselves physically. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, well, firstly, I wanted to say that whatever anyone is feeling at the moment is totally okay and totally normal. And I think I've been getting a lot of messages on social media and in text messages, and people are almost worried that they're worried. And with what's happening at the moment, it's totally understandable that people are worried, people are scared, people might be feeling bored, or whatever people are feeling is totally fine. And I kind of wanted to firstly say that.
I mean, do you find a big problem with mental health is that people not only have mental health symptoms, but also find that they're worried that they're abnormal for having them?
I think there is a bit of a societal thing that we assume that we're always going to be happy, and actually that's unachievable. We can't always be happy. Sometimes really big, horrible things happen, and we're going to feel sad or whatever the difficult feelings they are. And I think in the video, I've been making video to try and make mental health a bit more accessible, to not make it too medicalized, and just to kind of help people to understand that difficult feelings are totally normal, but the way that we kind of manage those feelings sometimes are unhealthy to us. So in that video that you're referring to, I talked about the difference between thoughts and feelings. So sometimes when we're worried, we start to develop thoughts in our head. We start to create little stories. So what happens if I get ill? And you start to create this sort of narrative in your head about how that will play out. And the thing is, when you start to have those thoughts, then your worry starts to increase, and you start to become very anxious. And you said about the kind of physical reaction. Well, that's quite a primitive response to threat. So actually our thoughts create kind of a threat response. So I don't know whether you've heard of kind of fight or flight response. So your body kind of goes into kind of gearing up to a fight or wanting to run away. And so that's what I meant about a physical reaction. So we can actually kind of create that in our mind. And then I sort of went on to talk about how you can actually choose whether you engage in those thoughts or not. And I talked about kind of mindfulness, about sort of stepping away from them and sort of letting them pass, because we sort of assume thoughts. Well, we give thoughts quite a lot of weight. We believe them to be true sometimes, or thought is just a thought, and it should just, you can choose whether to engage with it or not. And sometimes it's not healthy for you to get kind of lost in it.
And so how do we, because I mean, that sounds very simple, but people do dwell on things. I mean, I found, I've been basically social isolating for the last couple of weeks, and I'll have days where I feel like a caged animal. how can you sort of overcome the tyranny of those thoughts?
And you know, as you said, it sounds easy, but actually, it's not very easy at all, really, because you can get very lost in it. And I think part of it, is accepting that you're having those feelings and being a bit kind of kinder to yourself, and looking after yourself when you start to feel a certain way. So if you're starting to feel worried, then to recognize that you're feeling that, and to kind of, okay, I'm feeling worried at the moment. That's totally okay. What can I do to kind of look after myself? So doing the things that you would do if you were kind of physically unwell. We don't tend to take care of ourselves when we're having mental health difficulties in the same way that we do when we have physical health problems. And actually we should, have a bath or go for a walk or whatever helps, talk to people. And actually we're in a unique position at the moment because everyone is in the same boat. So everyone can kind of feel that empathy and be in each other's shoes because we all understand what's happening. So ring someone, kind of get that support from someone. So that's kind of one way. So accepting and being compassionate to yourself. But then also I talked about kind of mindfulness, which, I'm sure everyone's kind of heard of. It's always kind of bandied around, but that it's quite a difficult skill to kind of learn. But that is about being able to take a step back from those thoughts and kind of let them pass by. And there are quite a lot of apps out there. So Headspace is one that I've used. And it's about kind of being very present focused and tuning into your body. So about kind of mastering your mind really and where it takes you. But as I said, it's quite a skill you've got to learn.
And so, what are the kind of issues that people will find that they're experiencing when they're sort of in lockdown?
I was actually having quite an interesting conversation with another psychologist friend of mine about sort of relating this experience to when I had my first child, in that it will be. I find it personally difficult at the moment adjusting to a new normal. It's you kind of miss your old life. I miss being able to just pop out to the shops when I want to or go and meet friends. And it's about kind of getting into a new routine and then kind of remembering, when I did have my first child, that I did get there. I did, adjust, and I created a new life, and then I enjoyed that. But you've got to kind of give yourself time to adjust. It is going to be difficult at the beginning. So, isolating yourself, creating new routines. And that's what I kind of mean about being compassionate to yourself as well. Do those little things that you do enjoy. Make a nice meal if you've got the food there, or watch a video that you enjoyed. Do a board game, or whatever helps really. Do the little things. Treat yourself in any way that you can.
And obviously, often relationships succeed because the people in the relationships barely see each other. And, this time people are going to be stuck in relatively confined spaces with each other for long periods of time. Do you have any tips on sort of how to make sure your significant other or your kids don't drive you up the wall?
I think it might be inevitable that they're going to drive you at the wall at some point. So I think ensuring that you've got a bit of space to yourself as well. Go out for that bit of exercise on your own, or go and speak to someone else on the phone. Again, you can't expect that we're all going to be happy and have a joyous time every single day. It's going to be difficult, and we should expect that, and that's okay. But that's not to say that we're not going to have some okay times too. There's going to be days when you're going to feel all right. And I think that's another point really. Just take each day as it comes. If you do have a bad day, that doesn't mean you're going to have a bad day every day. just accept that, okay, today I've had a bad day, tomorrow it's going to be a new day, and maybe I'll feel a little bit different.
And if you find something like anxiety starts to become unmanageable, and it's not a matter of just having a bath, you start to become incredibly anxious, what kind of resources can people access?
I think if you do a Google search, there's a lot of literature going around about strategies that you can use. I would say kind of talk to somebody, because actually sometimes when you're like lost in those thoughts, just having a conversation with someone kind of can help to kind of unpick that. It is very difficult at the moment. Obviously, the situation we're in, and not being able to go out, and just life, it is hard. But just being kind to yourself, that is just the most important thing, really, and accept that you're going to have those feelings. But talk to people. If you're feeling very anxious, pick up the phone. Yeah, it's hard. It's going to be difficult, but there are going to be good days as well.
And so finally, we see medical professionals and we never kind of, as lay people, ask them how they're doing. And I guess to some degree, being a medical professional must be a kind of a lonely place to be at times. So how are you coping with the situation? Are you okay? Are you having good days, bad days?
Yeah, I'm pretty much managing the same as everyone else. When people ask me how I am, it's usually a difficult question to answer, actually, because sometimes I feel okay, and then sometimes I read the news and I feel not okay. I feel worried. I feel worried about myself, about my parents, about what's going to happen at the end of all this. So I think I'm much like everyone else, really. Good days and bad days, and that's okay. And I accept that I will feel like that, because this is a big thing. So yeah, it's and I'm worried about the clients that I work with, and yeah, it's a crazy time at the moment, for sure. And so I feel much the same as everyone else, I'm sure.
Brilliant. Well, Dr. Lucy Hughes, thank you very much for giving over your time, and I hope the recording wasn't overly painful. I mean,
no, you've been easy on me, so thanks.
If you want to support content like this, you can go to patreon.com/5G4D. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, and if you can, stay at home.